Hey there, welcome back to Undercover Mysteries. Today we're diving into two unbelievable cave exploration stories that spiraled into tragedy. We'll break down how things went from adventure to disaster and what could have been done differently. As always, viewer discretion is advised. On Sunday, January 13th, young Yulin Rosso was playing with his family on their farm outside the town of Tortolan, southern Spain. It was an ordinary Sunday. His father, Jose, was preparing a paella, a dish he was famous for in the area. The smell of the paella mixed with the sound of laughter as Yulin and other children ran around. Everything was calm until the unimaginable happened. Yulin was running across the slope of the hill when a small plastic cup slipped from his hand and rolled into an open hole in the ground. The hole, which had been drilled weeks earlier in search of groundwater, was barely visible against the uneven terrain. For a child, it was impossible to see. As Yulin bent down to retrieve the cup, he lost his balance, and the ground shifted. In an instant, he was gone. His mother, Victoria, heard his scream and rushed to the hole, trying to pull him out. Jose, frantic, dropped everything and attempted to widen the hole with his bare hands, but it was impossible. The hole was too narrow, only 11 inches, 28 centimeters wide, and plunged more than 330 feet, 100 meters, down into the earth. At around 230 feet, 70 meters, the ground had collapsed, forming a plug that blocked the passage. Yulin's parents and a group of hikers who had rushed to help attempted everything they could, but the hole was too deep and no rope could reach him. The situation was becoming more dire with every passing minute, and by 1:57 p.m., emergency services were called. Within minutes, the area was swarming with police officers, firefighters, and the Spanish Civil Guard. The first attempt to help involved lowering a rope into the hole, but he got snagged in the dirt. Then a probe camera was lowered, but it was stopped by the obstruction at around 230 feet, 70 meters. No image or sound came from the hole. The situation was bleak, and it quickly became clear that a traditional rescue was impossible. What followed became one of the largest and most complex rescue operations Spain had ever seen. The news spread quickly, and soon the whole country was gripped by the story. Reporters flooded the scene, and engineers and specialists were summoned. The problem was clear. The borehole was too narrow, and the ground too unstable for any conventional method of rescue. To make matters worse, every tool and attempt to widen the hole only threatened to make the situation worse, potentially sealing Yulin in deeper. The only feasible option was to drill a parallel shaft beside the borehole, then dig horizontally toward Yulin. But the rock under Tortolan was quartzite, one of the hardest stones on Earth. It was going to be an extremely difficult task. Specialized drilling rigs had to be brought in from across Spain, massive machinery that barely fit on the narrow mountain roads. Meanwhile, firefighters continued trying smaller interventions, but every effort was in vain. The rescue operation quickly turned into a national crisis, drawing hundreds of specialists from all fields: geologists, engineers, military personnel, and more. Everyone was racing against time, but progress was slow. The parallel shaft was drilled at an agonizingly slow pace. Every inch gained cost the team hours of work and risked collapsing the original borehole. With each failure, morale was chipped away, but the rescue teams refused to stop. By the second day, the strategy had evolved. A vertical rescue shaft would be drilled and reinforced with steel tubing to prevent collapse. A team of miners would then be lowered into the shaft to dig horizontally toward Yulin. This plan was still dangerous and would take days to execute, but with the clock ticking, it was the only hope. The drilling continued day and night, but progress was slow. The drill bits wore down quickly, the machines overheated, and the vibrations from the drills threatened to collapse the original borehole. As the days passed, public pressure mounted. Every setback was broadcast live, adding to the growing tension. Yulin's parents remained on the hillside, wrapped in blankets and clinging to hope. They refused to leave the site, even as the temperatures dropped. By the third day, helicopters were brought in to deliver heavy machinery too large to move along the narrow mountain roads. The drillers faced another challenge. Every time the drills cut into the mountain, vibrations threatened to bring down the original shaft. The risk of losing all sense of where Yulin was grew with every strike of the drill. By day 5, the tension was unbearable. The rescue shaft was barely halfway completed, and mechanical failures delayed progress. The machines had to be repaired, and the weather conditions worsened, adding further complications. But despite the setbacks, the rescue operation continued. By day 7, the shaft had only reached about 100 feet, 30 meters, of its intended depth. The target was over twice that distance, and with every passing hour, the pressure mounted. The cost of the operation was escalating, and the government promised unlimited support, but privately, officials were concerned about the costs and the chances of success. Still, no one spoke of giving up. The rescue mission had become a national effort, and the people of Spain held their breath. On day 10, after nearly 2 weeks of relentless work, the vertical shaft was finally complete. A team of elite miners was lowered into the cage, and the task of digging horizontally toward the borehole began. These miners were veterans of Spain's most dangerous rescue operations. They were used to working in cramped spaces, in the dark with only a headlamp for light. But even their skills were put to the test. The quartzite resisted every strike of the pickaxe, and every inch gained was hard-earned. The conditions inside the shaft were dangerous, and the miners worked in shifts of no more than 40 minutes at a time. The horizontal tunnel was barely wide enough to crawl through, and the air was thick with dust. The miners communicated with the surface via radios that crackled with static, but progress was agonizingly slow. Every moment inside the tunnel felt like a lifetime. The miners worked with the weight of the entire nation on their shoulders. Meanwhile, on the surface, the situation was no less tense. Reporters crowded around the police line. Julin's parents remained on the hillside, never leaving the site. They held out hope that their son might still be alive. By day 12, the miners had carved out almost 10 feet, 3 meters of tunnel toward the borehole. They had worked relentlessly, but the end was still not in sight. The crowds outside the police line grew restless. The uncertainty was unbearable. Could Julin still be alive after so many days underground? Would the miners break through in time? On January 25th, nearly 2 weeks after the operation began, the breakthrough came. The miners had finally reached the borehole. The tunnel was widened just enough to peer inside. The news was met with a hushed silence. Spain held its breath, waiting for news. But when the breakthrough came, it wasn't the news anyone was hoping for. Julin's parents, who had stayed on the hillside through every moment of uncertainty, were embraced by friends and family. What began as a desperate attempt to save a child ended in tragedy. The investigation into the cause of Julin's death revealed that the borehole had been drilled illegally, without proper permits, and had been left unsealed. By law, such boreholes were required to be capped, but in this case, it was not. The contractor insisted he had sealed it, but the ground had shifted after the work was completed. The tragedy led to new regulations and a national conversation about safety. Though the rescue failed, it became a testament to the lengths people will go to in the pursuit of saving a life. The rescue operation, which had captivated the entire nation, was a story of sacrifice, hope, and loss. A child's fall into an unsealed hole became not just a personal tragedy, but a national reckoning. The memory of Julin Rosso's tragic fate will not soon be forgotten in Spain. Tucked away in Florida's Leon Sink's cave system, Emerald Sink Cave is a breathtaking natural wonder that's as dangerous as it is beautiful. Known for its emerald green waters, this underwater cave entrance serves as a gateway to one of the largest and most intricate cave systems in the United States.
At over 180 feet deep, the cave is part of the Wakulla Spring system, which stretches over 32 miles of underwater passages. These winding tunnels and chambers are a diver's dream, but they also come with significant risks. In 2001, a tragic accident claimed the life of a diver who became disoriented in the dark, narrow passages, a reminder of the cave's unpredictability. But the allure of Emerald Sink lies not only in its dangers, but in the beauty that lurks beneath. The cave is filled with striking underwater formations and unique ecosystems. Only highly skilled cave divers are permitted to explore its depths, mapping out the extensive system and uncovering the rare species that call it home. Beneath its tranquil surface, Emerald Sink is home to troglodytic species, cave-dwelling creatures adapted to life in complete darkness. These delicate ecosystems rely on the purity of the water, making the area incredibly vulnerable to pollution and human interference. For those who venture above ground, the Leon Sink's geological area offers trails and views of Florida's unique karst topography. But the true adventure lies beneath, in the unexplored depths of Emerald Sink, where the mysterious beauty of Florida's underground world continues to captivate those daring enough to enter. On December 15, 1988, 3 cave divers set out for what should have been a routine dive into Emerald Sink Cave in Florida. The group, led by experienced diver Bill Cronin, descended into the cave system, confident that their knowledge and equipment would carry them safely through the dive. What began as a simple exploration quickly turned into a nightmare, a life-and-death scenario that would haunt the survivors forever. The 3 divers, Cronin, with somewhere between 100 and 125 cave dives under his belt, and his 2 less experienced companions, were all certified for basic cave diving, the entry-level certification that restricts divers to specific depth and distance limits. They were prepared for a dive to 150 feet, 800 feet into the cave, staying within their certification's boundaries. Or so they thought. But what followed was a cascade of errors that would change their lives forever. The divers quickly surpassed their certification limits, diving deeper and farther than they were trained to. Cronin, despite his experience, had a history of pushing beyond his training. As the group penetrated the cave, they passed a crucial junction where the cave branched off into different passages. This was a critical decision point, one where they would have to choose the correct passage to continue their journey. But instead of stopping and considering their options, they continued deeper into the cave, following a path toward their planned turnaround point. At 150 feet, Cronin signaled to his companions that it was time to turn around. They had reached their limit.
However, as they reversed course and began retracing their steps, they encountered a problem. At the same junction where they had made their first turn, Cronin made a fateful decision. He signaled to his companions to follow him down another path, one that, as they later discovered, would lead them deeper into the cave system. Cronin, confident that he knew the right way out, dismissed the exit arrows, critical markers indicating the safest path to the surface. His companions were hesitant, but they trusted him. Cronin was the leader, the one with the experience, and they followed him into the darkness. But something wasn't right. As they continued deeper into the cave, Cronin signaled to his companions that they were going the wrong way. He claimed that the exit arrows, which they had been following, were leading them in the wrong direction. His companions were confused and alarmed. They had been taught to trust the exit arrows as a standard of safety. But Cronin, with his extensive experience, insisted they had to turn around again. His companions, already questioning their leader's judgment, were now in a life-threatening situation. The tension grew. Cronin's 2 companions tried to communicate their concerns, but the flooded passages made it difficult to speak. Their air gauges were running dangerously low, and they had already been submerged for far longer than expected. Time was running out. They were faced with a choice: trust their leader and continue following him further into the cave, or trust their instincts and abandon him to make their way back to safety. The decision was agonizing, but survival instinct trumped loyalty. With no other choice, the 2 companions made the impossible decision to split from Cronin and follow the exit arrows back toward the entrance. They swam away, leaving Cronin behind, hoping against hope that they were making the right choice. The 2 divers reached the entrance, but they were in critical condition. Their air supply was almost completely exhausted, and they had no time left to complete their decompression stops. When they surfaced, they immediately began breathing supplemental oxygen to help their bodies off-gas the nitrogen that had built up in their bloodstreams due to the deep dive. They had narrowly avoided a devastating outcome, but the thought of leaving Cronin behind was a heavy burden they would carry forever. Meanwhile, Cronin remained deep in the cave, unaware of the true consequences of his decisions. A recovery team was immediately dispatched, composed of expert cave divers who were familiar with the Emerald Sink system. They systematically searched the cave, following the guideline and checking every branch of the system.
It wasn't long before they found Cronin's body, about 300 feet from the entrance and at a depth of 117 feet. He was found in a small pocket in the ceiling of the cave, separated from the guideline, his lifeline to the entrance. His depth gauge showed that he had descended further, reaching 160 feet, far deeper than anyone should have gone. He had become disoriented, losing his way in the flooded passages. Cronin's equipment told the tragic story. His air supply was critically low, barely enough for a few breaths at that depth. His regulators were poorly adjusted, and the ambient bleeds were clogged, making it harder to breathe. The strain of trying to inhale at that depth likely accelerated the onset of nitrogen narcosis, a cognitive impairment caused by breathing nitrogen under high pressure. This explains why Cronin, impaired by the narcosis, ignored the exit arrows and insisted that his companions were wrong. Unable to breathe properly and clouded by narcosis, Cronin continued in the wrong direction, unaware of the grave danger he was in. The equipment also showed signs of poor maintenance. His backup lights were dead and only his primary light was functioning. His body was found in the exact opposite direction of the exit, heading toward the clear-cut sink, a completely incorrect path. His decision to continue deeper into the cave, alone and out of air, was tragic, but it was also avoidable. The tragic incident at Emerald Sink Cave occurred due to a combination of factors. Cronin's overconfidence in his abilities played a major role, as he regularly pushed beyond his training limits, disregarding warnings from instructors. Despite being certified as a basic cave diver, he led the group into deeper, more dangerous areas of the cave, violating basic diving parameters. His decision to ignore the exit arrows and continue down a different path while being impaired by narcosis was a critical mistake. Additionally, poor equipment maintenance worsened the situation. Cronin's malfunctioning regulators and depleted air supply left him in a vulnerable state, which, combined with his narcosis, led to poor judgment and eventual disorientation. The incident at Emerald could have been prevented with better adherence to diving protocols. Sticking to certification limits would have ensured that the dive stayed within safe parameters, avoiding dangerous depths. Cronin should have respected the exit arrows, which were critical for guiding divers safely out of the cave. Clear communication between the divers would have allowed them to voice concerns and potentially question the decisions being made.